Welcome to the Action Network podcast, NBA Finals Edition. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by my podcast producer and NBA fantasy expert, Dan Titus, on this Thursday morning after the Boston Celtics defeated the Golden State Warriors in Game 3 to take a 2-1 series lead, 116-100 on Wednesday. Dan, we have a short turnaround for this game. We're going to try and get into some best bets. First off, how you doing?
Doing great, man. Coming off another good night of heat check. So salute to you for going undefeated yet again. But yeah, it was an interesting game. I think we were all on the right side of things for the most part, except for me. I was on the under, excuse me. So that didn't hit. But otherwise, I think we were spot on with the handicap. But for this game, Game 4 was such a quick turnaround, man. I have some concerns on the Warriors side of the ball, so I'm going to take the Boston Celtics -3.5 here to kick it off.
Wow. Okay. Taking the Celtics right off the bat to go up 3-1 on the Golden State Warriors. Before we get started, I want to let you know, make sure to rate and review this podcast because we'll be calling out our favorite 5-star reviews right here on the show. Every reviewer we call out will receive a free Action Pro account for 1 year. You get all sorts of cool stuff like that with that, including like signals and where the money's coming in. Awesome stuff, a full year. So be sure to leave those awesome Apple Podcast reviews and keep listening to hear us shout you out. All right, Titus. So you can listen to our full NBA podcast. This is gonna be a shorter edition. If you want to hear more on this game, you can check out Buckets with me and Brandon Anderson. And our starting position was like shrug because we love the Celtics in Game 3 to the point that we were all getting nervous about should we bet the Warriors just because all of us agree we like the Celtics. Like heat check was nothing but Celtics. I was on Celtics. Brandon was on Celtics. Joe Galera was like the whole Action crew was on Celtics, and it was a nice payday for us.
Yeah.
This game, I feel like, is a lot more up in the air. I'm curious to know my inclination, my lean is actually Warriors, but I'm not going to bet it. I'm curious to know why Celtics -4 is your best bet for Game 4.
Yeah. I just can't get over the fact that I don't know what the Warriors do to counter the Celtics here because Draymond Green has not been playing well offensively. He's only averaging 7 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. He is really their energy guy, but I felt the momentum was really when they were on their home floor. And I can't turn away from Steph Curry's injury. He's not getting an MRI. He's going to play, but how hurt is he? He's the catalyst of that offense. And despite Klay Thompson giving you 25 points, they still lost by 16. So I just don't think that the Warriors right now, I think they're going to need a reset here and get back to their home floor to kind of gain their momentum back in this series here. Marcus Smart was absolutely phenomenal in Game 3. Their big three really showed up, and I don't know that I can trust that the Warriors' big three can show up on the road here. Now, they do have a really good record against the spread after a loss in the postseason. They're 4-1 against the spread, covering by a margin of 8.5 points. 5-0 straight up, but all 5 of those games were at home, and they have yet to have a game on the road after a loss. So 16-11 against the spread after a loss since 2015 playoffs, 7-6 on the road. That pretty much leads me to the coin flip, right? And if I'm looking at the better team, I got to trust the Celtics here at 3.5.
So I think there's a couple of things. After Game 2, one of the reasons I like Boston was if you looked at the Game 2 performance, you wind up being like, why was Boston dumb? Like, why did Boston play as Coach Udoka actually asked them,
Stop playing like assholes.
Stop playing like assholes. And that's really all that's standing in the way of the Boston Celtics winning the series. However, the Warriors played like assholes in Game 3. Like, that is definitely true. Look at some of these rotation decisions. Like, Steve Kerr comes out on Thursday and is like, we got to do better on the glass. We've got to clean up the rebounding. Okay. How about not play Kevon Looney 16 minutes and 49 seconds there, Steve? Like that's a thing you probably shouldn't do. I think he realized very quickly that Nemanja Bjelica's little moment of being relevant had passed. He realized that very quickly. Bjelica, he plays in Game 2 and cost me money by taking Otto Porter's minutes, and then he plays 327 in this one. So just like, okay, guess that's out. I think here's a couple of my concerns. One of the reasons that we all like the Celtics in Game 3 was because of how good they've been after a loss. Now 7-0, straight up and against the spread after a loss. I like them off of high turnover games too. I mentioned that on a heat check that after they have high turnover games, they come back and they play much better.
Sure.
The problem is they have not been great in wins. They haven't been bad. This is the key. Okay. Boston 7-7 straight up and against the spread after a win in the postseason. Yeah. So again, we're looking at it's not that they lose. This isn't a fade the Celtics spot. Right. It's just that this isn't as good of a position for them. The Celtics come out and they steal game 1. The Warriors have to make adjustments to avoid going down 0-2. The Celtics counter those adjustments in game 3, playing more Robert Williams. They play with a lot more energy. They do a couple of things different. Now it's game 4 and it's Kerr's turn to be able to counter those adjustments. And again, I think the Celtics are the better team and have the edge, but it's not enough to where I feel like there's good value at -4 or on the money line. Now, the team that's won in the NBA Finals covers. That's just been the trend over forever and ever and ever. Like it's very rare that you get a win, not a cover, right? And it makes sense. These two teams are supposed to be pretty good, winning their respective conferences. You should be able to hang within the number, or cover the number rather. And if you can get within range, you should win outright. But the number doesn't, the money line doesn't sound good to me for Boston, so I don't have to worry about the points. Right. And 4 does seem a little strong for a bounce back spot, maybe a point high. If you get a 3.5, I don't mind it.
Yeah. Which is where I got it. Yeah.
I still
there's still some out there too. I still see a couple books that are still hanging the 3.5 there.
I still kind of go very much towards Warriors with this, but again, I don't want to bet it. I'll see if I get there by Friday. I might. I'll tell you my best bet for this game, and it's pretty simple. It's Celtics team total under. There's a 108.5 hanging, which is to me crazy. That is a high number of points. And you look at it and you say like, but do what?
That sounds like points bet.
Yeah, like there's like, you look at it and you go like, well, yeah, but they just scored 116. And it's true that when they have these offensive performances, they're great. I looked this up via givemethedog.com. Games after in the playoffs, after the Celtics hit their team total over, they are 3-5 straight up, 2-5 since the Nets series, notably, and 2-5 against the spread. Also in those games, they have wound up, they are 5-3 to the under on their team total after going over. This makes sense, right? And that all of this kind of makes sense from this is like the key. The Celtics come out red hot and they execute well and they hit the offensive glass and get threes and they're scoring and they're in rhythm. They put up a 122 offensive rating on Golden State. So Kerr watches this and is like, okay, they're hitting tonight. They came out with a lot of energy. They came out with the home crowds behind them. I have to play offense in order to keep up. So I'm going to play less Kevon Looney to try and space the floor. That doesn't work. They give up the offensive rebounds. So game 4, he comes back and says, all right, our focus is going to be on, I think he's going to go the other side. I think he's going to go to defense. I think we're going to see more Kevon Looney. If Steve Kerr comes out after game 3 and says, we got to clean up the rebounding, there is no other solution that is most readily apparent than Kevon Looney.
What about Gary Payton II too? I mean, he only saw 11 minutes and he was really good in game 2. Do you see him playing more as well? Because he can help on the defensive side, but also in the front court too. He's a very good slasher / offensive rebounder and just all around solid defender.
I think so. What's interesting here is it looks very much like Kerr is starting to chop guys out of the rotation. So like Iguodala is available and doesn't play, right? Yeah. Bielitsa goes back to 327. He had like a brief stint in that first quarter. Everybody else is garbage time. And other than that, it's Wiggins, Draymond, Steph, Clay, Looney for 16 minutes, Payton for 11 minutes, and Otto Porter Jr. with Jordan Poole. That's 8-man. That's still like a pretty standard NBA, playoff rotation. Sure. But the fact that he played 11:25 for Payton and 16:49 for Looney, like he wound up going heavier on these guys, which again is kind of surprising to your point on the Celtics. Like Clay goes 39 minutes and Steph goes 37 in a road game 3 with game 4 2 days later. I don't know if the idea was like, maybe we could steal it, but like they play less than 40, which is good. Like Wiggins is the only guy who goes over 40. But that is kind of interesting. But I do think that the Warriors buckle down on offense. The Celtics offense probably buckles down on defense. The Celtics offense probably tapers down a little bit.
So do you lean the under in this game if you had a lean to the what is it posted at 215 right now?
Yeah, it's
216?
a 215.
Mm-hmm.
I lean, I really like the team total under. And let me explain what, because I talked about this on Heat Check, because you took the under and I said, I like Golden State under here. And
Right.
it hit thanks to them scoring 4 points in the last 5 minutes of the game. I joked in our Slack, like, all I need is for them to score 8 points or less in the last 5 minutes, LOL. And then they scored 4 points. So that would probably should have not cashed, but it did. It's 214 and a half, by the way, right now. It opened 215 and a half. The app, our app has it at 214 and a half. So we're seeing some movement towards the under. I'll say this. If you're going to play a total, I think it's got to be the under. That's what I think you've got to do. The Celtics can win this game with a team total under. They can lose this game with a team total under. My concern, I think, for the total under, the combined, is the Warriors can do exactly what the Celtics did, 116-100. They have a good defensive game. They put up points. They get fast break. They force turnovers, which has been Boston's Achilles heel. And they're able to get this win with them going towards the over. I don't want to bet the Warriors over because, again, that leads, if I'm betting Celtics under and I bet Warriors over, I should just bet the side, right? So I do think there's value on the Celtics under here at 108.5. It's a high total relative to how good these defenses have been. There is kind of this question. One of the concerns I have for the under is 2 days off, right? Where does that impact things? If these are defense first teams, the fatigue may honestly hit them more on the defensive end than the offensive end.
Right.
But that's possible. We kind of think of it the opposite, which is like, oh, they're going to have dead legs. But if you're a team that puts defense first, you're a step slow on rotations. Guys in the NBA, in my opinion, can always kind of get buckets. Like they know how to draw it. Like they'll have enough energy. It's the mental and physical work of getting back on defense and transition and managing all, especially in these two teams with all their switches. It's managing all that and covering space on rotations and those types of things. So I do kind of worry about that. But overall, I still wind up being like, you know, I could see Golden State scoring to put the Celtics having to go against the set defense, which is exactly what Boston did to Golden State in game 3. And it coming out, I can also see Boston winning a 104-100, real grinded out, comes down to a handful of possessions. They cover the 3.5 kind of game. That's both of those scenarios are in play for me. So for me, the best bet is Celtics team total under.
I like it. Yeah, and I think that jives with much of what you were saying in terms of like just the game script and how this may go. I think I might have been a game early on the under, but I too agree with you. I lean the under as well. Want to throw out some other ideas for you. So where do you think you picked the Celtics in the beginning of this series? What do you see as the exact outcome to be now that you're leaning more towards the Warriors having a bounce back here? And they have won at least one away game in 26 consecutive playoff series. So this is the game that you think they're going to grab game 4. What do you see as the outcome thereafter?
So I bet Celtics -1.5 on the series spread line. And this is going to sound crazy, but it's really what I think. I think that they lose game. My lean, again, Celtics could absolutely win game 4, which is why I'm not betting it. Yeah. But my lean is Warriors win game 4. Everyone goes like, you know, despite everything, the Warriors have home court back. And then Boston goes in and wins game 5 and then closes it out in game 6. That to me is like a very possible outcome here. The question of where I get into trouble with this bet is, do I think that the Celtics will beat the Warriors in fewer games than they beat the Milwaukee Bucks without Chris Middleton and the Miami Heat?
Yeah.
Once we put it in those terms, I'm like, but one of the reasons I bet the 6 is I got +200 on it, and I can hedge it with a game 7, which is probably what I'll do. Now I will say, like, I took a little Warriors in 7 bets last night because the number is so high, which is already kind of a prior hedge.
Did you get it at 3-1?
Yeah. And so 350 actually. And so I found a 350 out there. So I took that. I just feel like the Celtics are going to win 2 of the next 3. I'll say this, like, it's funny. This is what I love about the playoffs. right now, if I tell you, the Warriors have to win 3 of the next 4 games to win versus the Boston Celtics, the best team in the NBA since January 29th to win the NBA Finals. You go, ooh. But if they win game 4 and protect home court at home, they just got to win 1 or 2. So right. It's like, that's how quickly it changes in terms of when we do they got to win X out of X. But I still look at the overall. I look at the overall format there and I go, I don't see the Warriors beating Boston 3 out of 4. And really what this comes down to is game 1. Like that's what this comes down to.
The one that they stole. Yeah.
They stole game 1. And that's a huge, it's funny because if you listen to this, you know that I liked the Celtics in the series, but I thought they would lose game 1 and win game 2. And you go like, how does that make so much of a difference if they win game 1? And the reality is because it kickstarted all these rotational advantages. Mm-hmm. Kerr has to make the first adjustments in game 2 because he can't afford going down 0-2. So that gives Udoka 2 days off to be able to make adjustments for game 3. So now Kerr has to make the adjustments in game 4, but by game 5, game 6, you're out of it. Like there's only so many adjustments you can make here, and teams will get better versus those adjustments. And it will just come out to like, who's going to make more shots and who's going to execute better. And the Warriors obviously have all this firepower, but this is the best defense that they've ever faced. I think in my opinion, this is the best defense they've ever faced in the finals. There's not been a better one. And so I do wind up thinking that they're going to win. The Celtics are going to win 2 of the next 3 somehow and take this in 6.
Okay. So yeah, the exact outcome I'm seeing for plus 170 out there. You could probably get it a couple other different places for Celtics in 6 and then Warriors in 7. We already said, plus 350, plus 300. I think that's still pretty good value for that. If you think the Warriors can steal 3 of the last 4.
Who do you like for finals MVP right now?
Tatum, still available at plus money, which is nice if you're on the Celtics side, but that Steph keeps creeping up. So, I picked Warriors in 7 from the get-go. So I just bought in some additional Steph shares just because it's at 2-1 right now.
Yeah.
Which potentially we'll see after game 4, that could even go even higher, but I like it at 2-1 right now. Other ones, I don't really see much value on the Klay Thompsons anymore.
Nope.
Definitely not Draymond Green. On the Celtics side, I think Jaylen Brown is becoming more compelling. I haven't placed a bet on it yet, but I think he's probably the one that would compete with Jason Tatum the most on the Celtics side right now, because I think Al Horford is pretty much leaning towards dead.
Sad. I'm so sad. He had such a good first quarter.
It was a nice run.
Was like, we're back in it, baby. And then he gave up that 7-point possession, and that was not good. And they just decided to start guarding his threes. Stop guarding his threes, Warriors. Jerks. I have a Tatum from way back. I grabbed him plus 175. I have a longer odds on him at one of the books. I have to I have it on a sheet here. That longer number. I did take Jaylen Brown at plus 650.
Oh,
after game 2, and then I bet him again last night at plus 350. So I'm pretty well established because to me it's Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum.
Exactly,
and I think it leans Tatum. I'm way more on Tatum. I'm heavy on Tatum, but I think Jaylen has a genuine shot here because a lot of it's like if I think the Celtics are going to win. And there's going to be like Tatum will be better in the losses.
Yeah.
And I think Brown will be better in the wins. And Brown's been huge in some of these. Like Tatum's passing has been sublime, but the Warriors are also very much trying to make him a passer. And Brown is just attacking. Like he went at Draymond last night, which I thought was really interesting. He just attacked him. Draymond looks bad. And a lot of
he looks a little cooked right now, man. And with all this complaining outside about, the crowd and all this, I don't know. He might be a little shook here. And it probably wasn't the best idea to talk about how much he's earned his keep and his calls on the home floor before you take a road trip to Boston. Probably not the best look for him.
Brandon and I talked about this on Buckets. I don't know what a Draymond bounce back game looks like.
He doesn't have anything to give on offense right now.
Yeah. I mean, a Draymond game would be peak defense, but there's only so much he can do.
Yeah.
Like the Celtics are just not going to play into him. That's not what they're going to do. They don't have to go to him. They don't have to play him, so they'll just avoid him, or Brown will attack him. He won game 2 versus Brown, and Brown came back and won game 3.
Right.
And so, look, Nekias Duncan also mentioned on Twitter, I thought this was like notable that Draymond played a lot of on Brown in the third quarter when the Warriors went on that huge run. So maybe there's still kind of a work there, but like his bounce back game to me still looks like, okay, he gets better rebounds because his rebounds have been terrible, right? So let's say like 10 rebounds,
7, 8 assists.
Yeah, maybe 8 assists. So like if you are wanting to play a bounce back game for Draymond, I guess just take the over on points and or on rebounds and assists. But I don't think there's a lot of value there. Like if anybody's going to carry them offensively in game 4, it's going to have to be Steph first off, because they're daring him to beat them, which is a bold strategy that's somehow working out. And Klay Thompson, who kind of got going. Everyone's kind of been like, you mentioned it. You're like, well, they got 25 from Klay and they lost. Yeah, because their defense was bad. So if Klay's kind of broken that seal, so to speak, and is kind of a little bit more, if the water's flowing a little bit more for him, then maybe he gets going and has like a big, instead of game 6 Klay, maybe we get game 4 Klay.
Yeah.
And that's, if you're betting Warriors, like those are the kind of sides. Do you have any other thing on props that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I do like Jaylen Brown. I'm going to continue to ride the wave here of over 6.5 rebounds. They haven't really moved this line yet, so I'm going to continue to attack it. He's been over in 6 of 10 home games in the postseason, 12.6 rebound chances at home in the postseason, over in 4 or 5 games versus Golden State, average of 7.6. And I think the switching D really allows for more variance in rebounding for the Celtics. We've seen different players be the rebounding leaders for the squad. And, even though, you're tracking to an under, that should be more misses. So more rebound opportunities potentially for Jaylen Brown here. So I really like his over rebounds.
Like that spot. If you like the Celtics, take the Tatum over on assists. If you like the Warriors, take the Tatum under on assists.
Are you concerned that it went up to 6.5? Do you still like it at 6.5? I guess I should say.
What's it juiced?
110.
Yeah, 110. I still think you're fine over. If you like it, if you like the Celtics, because like he had 9, right? He had 19 potential assists in game 1. All these types of things. Again, they've bounced back. It makes me like the under more because I like I lean Warriors, but I also again, I won't bet it because that's determinative. Like I don't know who wins this game. And as such, I cannot bet Tatum over or unders. I suggested Marcus Smart unders to Brandon, and Brandon was like, yeah, but you kind of think, he's like, if the Celtics do, he's like, if you think the Celtics are live, you can't bet Marcus Smart unders, because if the Celtics win, Marcus Smart had a good game.
100%.
And so that's a stay away as well. This is a very tricky game. I think game 5 is going to have a lot of value. I liked game 2 for Golden State. I like game 3 for Boston. This is the trickiest one I think of the series. So those are your best bets for the NBA Finals. You got anything else on the board?
No, that's it. I think that's a great coverage, and it's going to be a great game with only 1 day turnaround here. So let's see who ends up in the series here.
If the series continues, we'll have another NBA episode for you next week on the Action Network podcast. If not, keep it here for all your Stanley Cup final coverage on the Action Network podcast. Go Avs. And obviously continuing coverage of the NFL offseason, Major League Baseball, and more here on the Action Network podcast. For Dan Titus, I'm Matt Moore. Our producer today is Dan Titus. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you guys again next time on the Action Network podcast.